Hello, this is Joe Pryor with the virtualrealestateteam.com in Oklahoma City, and this is number 4 in a series that's designed for first-time home buyers in the Oklahoma City market. Every market's a little bit different, but I hope this applies and helps anybody anywhere, but I work the Oklahoma City market. So the first 2 videos were overviews. The third video we talked about our first meeting and building your financial future. Now what I want to do is go into the specific aspect of closing costs, because one of the questions I'm always asked is, who pays closing costs? And I'm going to give you what is my answer anyway, and I think it's a good answer. But there are closing costs that you have that, as a buyer, you're going to pay regardless. Now, typically that starts with the down payment. Now, there are some down payment assistance programs that can limit or even take care of this. But in most cases, we're at least doing the 3.5% down payment that we have on an FHA loan or more. Then the second type of cost is what we call typical loan closing costs. Now, these are things like a credit report and an appraisal that's ordered by the mortgage company. This usually runs no more than anywhere from $15 to $50 on the credit report, and usually about $400 typically on the appraisal. And these are costs that you pay to the mortgage company. Now, they can be reimbursed, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Now, there's some other costs typically that a mortgage company has. They're going to have what we call underwriting fees and tax service fees. Sometimes we call them junk fees, is kind of a common phrase. But that can be anywhere from $250 to $400. And so you have those costs. Then there's inspection cost, and I'm going to get into that in the next video, where you're going to pay a pest inspector to check for termites, and you're going to pay a whole house inspector to inspect the home, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, foundation, everything about the house. This normally runs about $275 to $500 depending on what's in the house, how big it is there crawl space, is there a sprinkler system. So that's a cost. Then there's another cost, which is what we call the escrow cost. This is where you put 1 year of insurance in advance and also pay a little bit of money in escrow, because at the end of the year, your mortgage company is going to pay your taxes for you, your property taxes, and they're going to renew your insurance every year. Now, you can change your company, but they're going to renew that insurance. So they set up a little bit of an escrow account. Now, those are your basic closing costs. Now, there's a few others. There's title insurance, which is where a title company certifies that it's free and clear. And then there's also possibilities that maybe you want to buy down the interest rate. Maybe you want to pay for a lower interest rate. I'll talk about that in another video. But these are your basic loan closing costs. Now, the seller or the buyer can negotiate most of these costs. Now, the down payment is not that way, but the credit report, the appraisal, for instance, can be reimbursed. Now, the seller can't pay that for you, but he can reimburse it at closing, because you want that appraiser to work for you. Now, some of the other costs are negotiable, including those escrows, the taxes and insurance that's put back. Now, there's a limit, of course. Now, in FHA, right now, it's a 6% of whatever the purchase price is, so $100,000, for instance, up to $6,000. So you can cut your costs down quite a bit. Conventional is typically 3%. 3% of $100,000 would be $3,000. So you can ask the seller to pay for these costs. Now, here's my answer about who pays closing costs. It's always you. Think about it for a minute. If you have the cash to pay $3,000 or $6,000 worth of closing costs, it's obvious that you're paying for it. If the seller is paying for it, if you ask the seller to pay for it and you think the seller is paying for it, in essence, he's not. Now, let me put my seller's realtor hat on for a minute, because I work both sides of that fence. When I'm dealing with a seller and I get an offer in and there's $6,000 worth of closing costs at $100,000, I tell the seller that's really a $94,000 offer. And so what we would do, naturally, is we would bring the price up $6,000 to compensate for that, because the seller always looks at a net figure. So if you're asking for him to pay that cost, he's going to price it into the house in terms of what he wants you to buy it for. So in that particular respect, you're paying for it too. Now, you're not paying for it in cash, but you're paying for it in a higher mortgage, because you just paid, let's say, $6,000 more for the house. Now here's the decision that you have to make. Now that $6,000 that's now built into the mortgage is essentially about $30 a month. So you, on the one hand, you have $6,000 out of pocket if you pay for it yourself, and that's okay if you have it. On the other hand, if you want some reserve funds, if you want to put that $6,000 back, which may not be a bad idea, then what you're going to do is you're going to be paying $360 more in a year for your house payment. So you might need to make a few sacrifices. The answer is to the question, which one is better, is neither. What is better is what is in your best interest. If you have the cash, you want a lower mortgage, which means there's another $6,000 worth of equity, you pay for your own closing cost out of pocket. If you need a reserve fund, if that is something that's very important, and I do believe that it is, and having the seller pay that $6,000 as long as the house appraises, remember the house still has to appraise for the total purchase price, and they're not going to give credit for that $6,000. If the house is a good deal, then you're paying $30 a month, maybe one or two times, during a period of time you don't go out to eat. That pays for that house and puts $6,000 not for you to spend on furniture, but to put back in something that gives you a return on investment and builds up a nest egg for the future. So that's the video that we have about closing costs. Now, the next video is going to be about inspections. We're going to talk about that. So until then, this is Joe Pryor with the Virtual Real Estate Team, where we deliver traditional real estate values with the speed of technology, especially for first-time homebuyers.